In 2018, I was a busy mom of four, and I thought that I was working in the evenings, and I just thought I was just tired. And it got to the point where I was taking 3-hour naps every day, and that lasted through the summer when I wasn't teaching. And my husband said, there's something definitely wrong. My history is that my father also was diagnosed with colon cancer, his mother and half of her siblings, and same age that I was diagnosed at, and my father passed away 2 years later. And I have something called Lynch syndrome, where cancer, it's 3% of colon cancers, and it grows from polyp to full-blown cancer in as little as 36 months, versus typically in a person it's 10 years. I was severely anemic, so anemic that my organs could have failed at any moment. So you could imagine the fear that set in, and all the thoughts of not seeing my kids grow up. Growing old with my husband, it seemed unbearable at times. And especially knowing the history of my father, I think that added to the fear. But, we really came to a point of really deciding, am I going to live in fear, or am I going to live by faith and fight? And so we actually interviewed 3 different oncologists from 3 different hospitals. And they all gave me a little piece of different information. But there was one physician from Johns Hopkins that when he did all the testing just for the initial visit, they discovered it had already spread to my liver. And so when I went to see him, he gave me the news. I thought I was done, but he gave me the news that I was now stage 4. And so that started a whole new process of having to get my liver resected, and him wanting me to look into chemotherapy. And when I asked him the question, I said, so what are the chances of me surviving? Should I do chemotherapy, or should I decide not to? And this is not incorporating mistletoe, homeopathy, plant-based diet, nothing. Just if I did it, what are my chances of survival? And he said, well, it would help you about 10%. And I just felt like I was burning down a whole forest for one rotten tree. And I said, if I have 6 months to live, I want to live it out with my family. I want to enjoy the time I have left with them. And I don't want to be weak and sick and in bed. And that was just a choice I made. Some people make different choices, but I saw family go that way, and I didn't want my kids to see me going that way. And so I declined the chemo and the radiation. And in that time, my husband was in the wellness industry, so he knew what websites to look into. He was researching all different things. And 2 people from 2 different walks of life within the same week said, you need to speak with this physician. And he specialized in natural medicine. And he was the one that told us about mistletoe. He told us that it had chemotherapeutic effects, that it could help not only with my immune system, but also cause apoptosis in the cancer cells. I was very thankful that my oncologist at Johns Hopkins was humble enough to accept my approach to wanting a more complementary approach. And he monitored me every 3 months and making sure with my blood work and my tests. And since that day, I had my liver surgery in 2018. There's never been any visible sign of cancer again in my body. So after overcoming the cancer, I realized how effective it was for me, and I knew that it could be for other people. And I said, this needs to be available to patients. And I asked my oncologist at Hopkins, and he was a lead researcher there, and he said, well, you have to do a clinical trial on it. And I said, well, let's do it. And he's like, well, it's not that easy. He said it costs millions of dollars and lots of research. And I said, we'll raise the money. We started something called Believe Mugs, where we started to distribute to patients to give them encouragement and hope while I was at my appointments, because we saw people sitting in the waiting rooms, and you just see the anxiety, you see the stress, and a lot of people alone. And we said, we have to do something. I feel like I'm here for a reason, And so we had people in the community that painted them, and we filled them with the I will have no fear prayer. And we'd just go by and we'd just give them a gift and say, here, we hope this encourages you. Believe you can be well. So I used that word again on the mug. It was the only word allowed on it. A daily reminder for them when they take their tea or their coffee to believe for themselves. And once the clinical trial started to form and other things, my husband's like, we need to raise the funds needed. We needed to become a nonprofit, and we needed to create a name that would encompass all that we wanted to do. And he said, what do we want people to do? What do we want them to be thinking? And he's like, and I was like, well, we want them to believe. And he goes, not just believe. He goes, we want them to believe big. And he goes, that's the name. And I'm like, that is the name. He goes, it must be taken. Because you think of dream big and all these things. And we looked and it wasn't. And we're like, there it is. So Believe Big became the name of our organization.